All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Nahulan Buell. I lead the business planning function at Hitachi-Vantara. That encompasses, obviously, our sales planning efforts, forecasting and pipeline management, our metrics and KPIs, and also sales incentives. Today, I'm excited to be sharing our journey with Anaplan. This is going to be a multi-year journey for us. We're in the first inning of that in our first year. And so far very pleased with the results and the progress we've made. And I'll take you through some of the content here that we've structured into three sections. The situation that we encountered with Anaplan and coming into this planning cycle, our approach on an overall basis, what we did in year one and the roadmap looking ahead, as well as some of the business outcomes and lessons learned. And then finally, we'll cover the technical architecture as we wrap up before we hopefully have some time for some Q&A. Okay.
Thanks, Nolan. Hi all, this is Yashwant and I'm part of Enquero leadership team. I run the SPM practice in Enquero and also the Anaplan practice. I have 15 plus years of industry experience in SPM space, doing consulting for most of the high-tech companies in the Valley. And today we're going to share the success story of Hitachi-Vantara, which was kind of delivered in a record time, and the value delivered will also be discussed in this session.
Thank you. All right, so I love this quote by Thomas Edison. I think as planners, this gives us our seat at the table, and this should probably resonate with a lot of us, right? I mean, good fortune, good success, good business execution really is at the intersection of opportunity and also preparation and planning. I'm sure if Edison was around today, he probably would have used connected planning instead of planning in this quote. But this is a simple but important message, which is good outcomes don't just happen happenstance or by luck, but actually through proper planful approach to how you want to tackle an opportunity. Before I dive into the planning portion of that quote, let me first talk about the opportunity in front of Hitachi-Vantara. One of the mega trends we hear about all the time these days is the sheer amount and volume of data that's being created as more and more devices are connected and more devices come online. For our customers at Hitachi-Vantara, what this presents is an opportunity to really maximize the value of their data. Okay? As disruption, at the pace of disruption and innovation increases, what we see is a lot of our customers investing in solutions and software that make their devices and their hardware smarter, which in turn is creating more data, and then it's the opportunity to actually mine that data to try and get the insights from it. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about Hitachi-Vantara. Hitachi was formed in September of 2017, bringing together three companies and their technology and their expertise. Hitachi Data Systems, which is a well-known company in the data management space, Pentaho, which has been in the big data and analytics space for a while, and then also our Lumada IoT solutions from our Hitachi Insights group. These three companies are really, we're bringing the domain expertise together to really drive data-driven solutions for our customers. Okay, the Hitachi-Vantara is going through a massive transformation right now. We've traditionally been primarily a hardware vendor and a hardware model, and where we're moving to is more software and solution-centric business model. And the formation of Hitachi-Vantara is just the tip of the spear, as Hitachi Limited as an entity is also looking to drive a digital transformation in its entire business. So we're combining with this entity, really combining over 100 years of operational technology experience across the broader Hitachi ecosystem with over 60 years of experience in the information technology arena in areas like infrastructure, big data, advanced analytics, machine learning, and AI, combined with professional services to drive a path for intelligent innovation and also to help our customers maximize the return on their data. We're a well-established business. We have over 11,000 loyal customers around the world. We're in over 100 countries. We serve over 85% of the global Fortune 100 companies. You can see the industries listed above me. We have over 2,000 partners in our ecosystem and 7,000 employees, about half of which are in the sales and services arena. So before I dive into the approach, let me just first give you some context on the situation that we encountered. This slide and this image should be very familiar for any of you that have been involved in the sales planning process. At the best of times, it can be a very frustrating process, and then some of that stress could be rooted in issues with data and the lack of quality of our data, processes, aggressive timelines, late go-to-market decisions, and just unclear ownership of who owns what in those decisions. It could be an issue with our systems and the lack of flexibility, scalability, visibility, and automation of our systems, and even people, right? Capacity, skill sets, things of that nature. So as we took on the sales planning process this year, this was the first time that sales operations was involved in driving the sales planning process at Hitachi-Vantara. Up until this point in time, it would have been driven by our sales finance organization. And so for many of our sales operations folks, both at a global level and in the geos and in the field, this was a new experience for them. And it speaks to the power of Anaplan in terms of how intuitive it can be in terms of setting up workflows to go through a territory and quota planning process. Just to summarize some of the key issues we ran into. You can see, we ran, like most companies, Excel was our enterprise planning tool, right? Very, very heavy dependency on our reporting from Excel, processes being running in Excel, and did not allow us the ability to actually do roll-ups and aggregations of data in a very efficient manner. Secondly, you can see it was siloed. We had versions of Excel models. I think there was one instance we had 29 versions of a quota planning model in one of our geos sitting on people's desktops, so not able to be shared across a broader community of folks, which then didn't foster collaboration. And oftentimes what we see there is you have a misalignment in strategy between your generalists and your specialists, which then lead to inconsistent coverage models, inconsistent incentive systems, etc. We also have silos inside of the organization. There was a lot of tribal knowledge in the organization, sitting in pockets within HR and finance. There was some even in sales operations. So we had to break through those in this process. When we talk about modeling and inflexibility, a lot of the models were done as standalone Excel models and not able to be scaled on a mass scale. So, and then finally, in terms of governance or lack of oversight, there wasn't the ability to actually drill down, audit, and review data as needed on a real-time basis. Files had to be sent back. It took days for us to consolidate them. There'd be formula errors, things of that nature. So that was a little bit about the environment that we encountered going in, and really what led to us approaching Anaplan and Enquero to really look at this as a solution in year one for our planning cycle. So in terms of our approach, one of the things we did back in September, we're a March fiscal year-end company, so about 6 months prior to that, when we started looking at and evaluating Anaplan, one of the things we did with Enquero, our partner in this journey, was to look at bringing a cross-functional team together and really understanding and baselining where our processes were. Okay, so we looked at all the critical capabilities that are involved in a sales planning cycle, and really understood what the maturity of those processes were, where the weaknesses and gaps were, and we went through a fairly extensive 2-day workshop with a cross-functional team from sales operations, sales finance, our strategy teams, HR organizations, commissions accounting. There was probably about 40 or 50 people in that room that contributed to that. Coming out of that, Enquero did a full-blown assessment of those capabilities and gave us a recommendation on which areas to begin with as we looked at the scope in year one. Those recommendations are really what informed our implementation strategy in this multi-year journey. Oh, the last thing I should have mentioned as well is at the very end of that, before we went into a full-scale implementation, we did do a proof of concept in a couple of our geos. We picked a few different districts, not only in the US but also outside, where you had things like different selling motions, multiple countries, that you had to roll up data in multiple currencies, and different role types at play as well. So we did kick the tires a little bit before we decided to actually move forward with the implementation. So here's our roadmap. In year one, our implementation started, I think, in earnest in January. We went through probably a 12 to a 13 week period, which was a very, very heavy lift. It was probably the most intensive part of this project. And in the first phase, when we talk about territory optimization, there were a few different elements there. The big piece there was the data hub, right? It's your data model. What that involved is us bringing together different siloed manual data sets. You talk about your customer data, you talk about 3 years of revenue history, pipeline and opportunity data, account potential, your segmentation, various disparate forms of data into one environment. We had to then go through that and organize all of that, and that took a significant amount of time. I'll share some of the results at the very end of this presentation, but our data quality has been something that we had been focusing on in the 6 months even prior to that, and we felt like we'd made some good progress, but I think this exercise and going through this project also highlighted some of the work that still needed to be done. With respect to our hierarchies, we implemented our sales hierarchy. We have a 4-level sales hierarchy from geo, region, district, sub-district. And implemented that and modeled and had the modeling capabilities for what that was in the current year and what that could look like in the next year. We looked at that in terms of our role and position hierarchy as well. And then we looked at all the different elements of our account mapping model, right? So how do you deal with reps that you're going to hire? How do you deal with accounts that are going to be covered by your partner ecosystem? We had various segmentation guidelines around our accounts also that had to be taken into consideration with the number of accounts if you're a commercial rep versus an enterprise rep that you were going to be responsible for in the year ahead. From there we moved into sort of the quota planning model. And our quota methodology is quite complex for a company of our size. We've got our reps and our district managers on what we call sort of gross revenue or bookings. Our VPs, area VPs or region VPs, and our geos are on what we call net revenue. So there are elements of reconciling the gross to net. There are elements of how do we do crediting in large accounts when you've got shared coverage or splits or duplicate coverage, right, which are done deliberately. How do we gross up our product for things like maintenance and professional services and managed services? So all of those elements had to be brought in and built into the quota allocation methodology. And then when we got to April, one of the things that did play in our favor, we had a very, very late issuance of our financial targets. So that gave us a little bit more runway to actually get some of the models built. But we were able to then, when those financial targets were issued, bring that into the model and finalize our territories and our account ownership for the new fiscal year, as well as push in the new hierarchy for FY19. Okay. The other great thing I'll speak to here, I think, with Anaplan was in the past trying to do reviews of how our quotas had been set and looking at reps that had overperformed in prior years versus what the quota that was being set this year. A lot of that was a lot of Excel jockeying that had to be done on one-off basis. This model actually gave us that visibility of what accounts did you own last year, what was your quota, how did you do against that, because we had the 3 years of each rep's attainment in the system. And our leadership team was able to look at that and instantly sort of take a look at all the high flyers and approve any exceptions there. So here's what lies ahead for us. When we went into this journey, there were a couple of things that we did very deliberately. One was not looking at data integration. We understood we got off to a late start, and that was definitely not part of the scope for our first year of using Anaplan. So when I think about the next 12 months, we want to integrate Anaplan now back into a lot of the source systems, namely Salesforce, exactly for our commission system, and our Oracle HR system as well. We want to expand the modeling capabilities that are in Anaplan. I think we've done some basic sandboxing, but I think there's a whole nother level of things like Territory Optimizer and things of that nature that we can expand the capabilities to. In year one, we only looked at the scope being for our account managers. We have about 500 account managers and their sales management teams that they roll up into. There's a broader population of systems engineers or pre-sales resources, specialists, channels resources that we now need to expand the data model and ensure that the territory and quota planning actually happens in Anaplan looking forwards. And then the other piece of it as well, I think, is we were very aggressive with in our timeline and trying to build a lot of the worksheets and the reports in Anaplan. I think there's another level we could get to in terms of the visualization of those using graphs and grids and maps versus sort of simple tables. So a little bit there about kind of where we're going with the implementation as we look ahead. So let me just touch on the business outcomes. What you see up on the slide there is just some broad themes, and I think you've probably heard these across different presentations. What we were able to do with Anaplan this year, if we think about this planning cycle and what made it different, I mentioned at the outset we're going through a large transformation. Even this year we had a very big reorganization in our Americas sales team. Our Americas sales team is probably about 45% of our overall business. We had 26 districts that were either deleted, renamed, or moved. So that's data on customers, reps that had to be moved, from where they were in the prior fiscal year into this fiscal year. Now we actually launched an inside sales model. So as we moved down market from enterprise into commercial, we had to build in and allow our data model to actually allow for territories for our inside sales reps who are going to be carrying about 300 to 350 commercial accounts each. Our quota model actually changed and became a lot more complex year over year. So in the past we had 3 quota elements. We've now moved to 7 as we've moved more and more into digital software and digital solutions for our growth and obviously for profitability reasons. So those are some of the elements when I talk about sort of the modeling and what-if capabilities and the flexibility of this platform that we were able to accomplish. When you talk about the time saving, last year we unfortunately did not have a good baseline on how much time, how many resources were spent last year, because the process, as I mentioned, was actually run by finance, and we also had Deloitte Consulting on board last year. But one of the things I can tell you as an outcome of Anaplan, we had last year an error rate of about 60% on the communication of goals to reps. We used what we call a sales letter, which is a thing that precedes their goal sheet. And because it was done in Excel and there was issues with Excel models merging, we had a lot of those letters that had to be redone. This year, I'd say the error rate and the rejections on all of our what we call is a PAF, a personal acknowledgement form or goal sheets, less than 10%. So just proof that when you're working in the one data model, everyone's looking at the same data. You don't have those issues with trying to merge different data sets and things can go awry. Okay? In terms of sort of the big lessons learned, let me just hit on a couple here, and then I'll turn it over to Yesh. I think the one lesson here is your data quality can never be good enough, right? I think I can't overstate that enough. I think we thought coming into this exercise that we'd actually made some big strides, and I think we've got some bigger ones to go with our data quality. So there are processes that we're putting in place right now, particularly as we look to integrate Anaplan with some of our source systems like Salesforce, which is our single source of truth for our customer data, to continue to improve that. Requirements gathering, I think one of the things we learned coming into this as a first time was, moving forwards, ensuring that we've got a broader reach in terms of gathering the inputs on the models and the use cases that we need to build into Anaplan. This year in that 12 to 13 weeks, I think we talked about an agile development model, but I'd probably call it an agile plus development model. We were redefining the requirements, the use cases on the fly. And it's a good thing that we had the Enquero team with us who came along with us on that journey and were flexible enough to accommodate some of those changes that we had to do on the fly. And then I think the last one is, I think when you do the testing, make sure that you've got a wide enough user base that's actually testing those models that are being built. And more important than even that, as you're continuing to build at a very, very fast speed, and you're doing so in a modularized manner, build in time to go back and actually test not just the latest model, but from the beginning, right? Because I think we found as we went into these things that the last thing that was built worked fine, but it didn't quite connect with some of the things that had been, some of the capabilities that had been built previously. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over now to Yesh to go through the technical architecture.
You can move on. So when we talk about the technical architecture, the first thing that we look at is what are the problems that we were facing, and the three problems that was given to us is how we can centralize the process, because the planning was done in silo and across all the theaters, and second thing is how we can standardize the process, and third and most important part is how we can digitize this, some things that we're doing offline, how we can make it online. So given these three problem statements, the two biggest challenge that we had was first one, obviously on the data quality part, which Nolan already touched on most of the challenges, but I would definitely give the credit to the Hitachi team, where whenever we went back to them with some of these data quality issues, they did a turnaround within 24 hours, coming back to us with the right set of data. And the second biggest challenge was a scalable architecture to meet their constantly changing go-to-market decisions, because there were decisions that were kept changing in terms of how you were to organize your next fiscal year, how you are to structure your goal sheets going to be for next year. So given all those requirements, constantly changing requirements, so we have to create a scalable architecture which can meet that kind of needs as well. So first and foremost, what we decided, and that's something which we are proud of, that we will not be doing an data integration system to system, and because given all the data challenges, naming variations, etc., so we decided to go with the first round with a manual data load into the system, and then on a phase 2 or a stage 2, we will be able to take that as an automation experience. So based on that, we identified all the data sources, and in some cases we were even tapping into what is the key attributes there and how we can avoid the data redundancy and all. Knowing all those challenges, what the initial workshop helped us a lot in terms of setting our expectation, what's the quality of data. So we normally follow a best practice of setting up a data hub, and within that data hub, we also make sure that there are certain data governance and business rules are built on it. So this is something which we followed here as well, where we came out with the dashboard within Data Hub, which will give you a quality assurance in terms of what is the level of confidence that you have in the data, in case if there are too many data discrepancies are there, or in case if there are too many challenges with the data refresh and all, you will be able to know well ahead of time before you push the data into the actual production models. So that's something which helped us to strengthen the quality of the data. So once the data hub is in place with the level of a quality that can be acceptable, so that's when we started moving towards building other models there. So it was a continuous journey for us. One side we were working on cleansing the data and making the data hub more cleaner. On the other side, the model was built, and because we had only a limited time, we were always running behind both the tracks, and then eventually we ended up in a beautiful system which can meet their need as well. So when it comes to scalability, we definitely had to think in terms of what all the different personas that we had, and coming out with the security architecture for that, as well as different dashboards to meet that persona and data encryption and data hiding as well. So in a nutshell, if we are looking at the effort that we have spent in last 13 weeks, so it has created a strong platform for us to get into next fiscal year, and definitely we are taking a next step towards it in integrating the data as well, where most of the data which is coming as a manual data load into the Anaplan hub, so this will be automated using the MuleSoft technology. So this is kind of a scalable architecture which can meet their future need as well. So I want to take a pause here and want to spend some more time for questions. Any questions? Quick questions?
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Can
hear you.
Okay. My question is, do you think the model that you built for Territory and Quota are going to be leveraged for planning the next fiscal year every year, or also for in-year adjustments? And if it's not for in-year adjustments, what do you plan to use for that? Thank you.
It's a really good question. So yeah, we do plan on actually using that model again in future years. Now, I think our quota allocation, quota methodology may get refined a little bit from year to year as we push more and more aggressively into the digital side of the business. So I think we'll tweak it, but I don't think it'll be a wholesale change of the model. Okay. For in-year adjustments, I think we're still working through kind of whether we can snapshot the model that we have right now. And so as we have new reps coming on board and we have to reset quotas with proration and things of that nature, how do we adjust for that? So it's a great question. It's something that I think we're thinking through right now. We just got, we're in the middle of Q1 right now, so we've just got our PAFs out, and that's some of the work that's ahead of us.